I thank you very much for waiting patiently. We will start with a little kirtan. Very happy to be at the house of Shashi and Ratna and of course Chinmay Radha. The first time I'm coming here. I'm glad to see so many of you gathered here this evening, on a Saturday evening, when you could have been doing many other things, but you have chosen to be here in a satsang, and I thank you very much for it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Gaur Premanande. Shri Shri Radha Vallabha ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Ajnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadati Spapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaganda Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. I think we have a lot of competition today. Can somebody take care of my competitors? Stiff competition. In the ancient times, there used to be a Muni. His name was Charvak. How many of you have heard of the name Charvak? Okay, few. Now Charvak, even though he was a Muni, but he was not actually a saint. He was not a spiritualist at all. But he was just a deep thinker and a speculator. And he would come out with so many different types of theories. One of his opinions is very famous. And that is, Rinam kritva ghritam pibet, yavad jivet sukham jivet, Bhasmi bhutasya dehasya kim punaragamano bhavet. So the meaning of this verse is, Charvak Muni is saying, Rinam kritva, you borrow. Rin means to take loan, to have a debt. Take a loan, beg, borrow or steal, but ghritam pibet, drink ghee. In other words, eat food that is made out and cooked in ghee. In the ancient times, that was considered to be opulent living. If you wanted real delicious, tasty food, it had to be cooked in pure ghee, cow's ghee. So eating food in pure cow's ghee was a symbol of good living, of opulent living, of eating very good food. So Charvak's philosophy is, Rinam kritva ghritam pibet. Beg, borrow or steal, but live the good life. Enjoy life as much as you can. And if somebody asks him or says or protests that, my dear sir, if we beg, borrow or steal just to enjoy this world, if we're going to commit all sorts of sinful activities, then will we not suffer some sinful reactions? Will we not have to pay for it even in a future life? So Charvak has a ready answer for that. He says, Bhasmi bhutasya dehasya, when this particular body is destroyed, when this becomes ash, kim punaragamano bhavet, then who knows what will come in the future? Where is the evidence of a next life? Who has seen the future life? So why should we worry about a future life when we will be punished for certain sins committed in this life? We have not seen any future life. Therefore, let's not worry about it. Let us eat, drink, and be merry. Now, this is a very popular philosophy. Had Charvak been alive today, he would have been very happy, because he would have had many, many disciples, many followers. Because Charvak's philosophy is a very popular philosophy today. Somehow or the other, eat, drink, and be merry. And in the process of trying to enjoy the world, if you have to do a few things that are not considered noble or pious, even if it means doing sinful activities, doesn't matter. But I must eat, drink, and be happy. So that is the conception of most people in the world today. That happiness means to enjoy life. Somehow or other we must enjoy. By hook or by crook, we must obtain the things of enjoyment in this world. But real happiness is not to be found in this world, according to Bhagavad Gita. The more we look for happiness that can be found here, the more we will be entangled in suffering. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Yahi samsparshaja bhoga dukkhayonaya evate adyantavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddhaha. The so-called bliss or happiness of this world is merely the so-called contact of the senses with the sense objects. This so-called bliss or so-called happiness is just temporary pleasures that we can derive from this body and mind in contact with this world. But actually this is not real happiness. Lord Krishna says, Dukkha yonaya evate. It is a mother of distress. The happiness of this world is called distress, is a cause of distress. Now I will take an English examination for all of you. Let us see how good you are in English. Please spell the word pleasure. Who would like to try? Who is a brave person who would like to try? Yes.
Pleasure.
Pleasure. Is he right?
Yes.
I don't hear the confident answers. Seems everybody's very suspicious that there's some trick here going on and very hesitant to answer with confidence. If you were sitting for an English examination, then you would get 100% marks. But if you're sitting for Bhagavad Gita examination, then you will not get any marks. Because if you want me to spell how pleasure is spelled, when you look at it from Bhagavad Gita language, then it is spelled as Pain. Now you will say, such a negative view of life. You sadhus always speak negative things. You never speak good things in life. Koi achhi khabar to sunao kabhi to. Sometimes at least make us hear some nice things in life. Always talking about this material world is a miserable place. It's a place of death. Don't you have any good things to talk about? We have plenty of good things to talk about, provided we understand also the reality of life, of what is good and what is bad. So long as we are attracted to the glitter and glamour of this world and think this is the good thing in life, then we will never really understand actually what the good things in life are. For an alcoholic, the good thing in life is more alcohol. You try to tell him there's something else that is good in life, he won't understand it. So what is good and what is bad is something that seems to be relative. According to my conception, I think something is good. Somebody else thinks something else is good. But Lord Krishna's definition of good is the most important one, because that is equal for all of us. Lord Krishna clearly says in the Bhagavad Gita, the more you try for the pleasures of this world, of any sort, the more you will invite suffering into your life. This is the irony, this is the contradiction, the paradox. The more you struggle to be happy, the more you will be miserable. Imagine a fly who gets caught in a spider's web. And the moment the fly gets caught, the first thing instinctively the fly does is to flap its wings and flail its 8 legs. I think a fly has 8 legs, isn't it? Or 6? Anyway, 8 or 6, enough. So the flails its 8 legs. But the more it does that, the more it gets trapped in the web. The tighter and tighter it gets bound. What is the only way the fly can get free? Somebody else who is not trapped in the web has to come and cut the web. Then that the fly can become free. Otherwise the spider is waiting. So similarly, in this world too, we are bound by the stringent laws of nature. And it is very difficult for us to be happy when we are bound. Imagine a prison where there are different kinds of prisoners. They've all been bound hand and feet by different types of metal chains. One of them has a chain that is made of iron. Another one has a chain that is made of gold. Another one has chains on the hands and feet that are made out of silver. And the one who is sitting inside, hands and legs chained with chains of gold, is looking at the other person and saying, "See, I have chains of gold and you have chains of iron." And he's looking, the silver man is also saying the same thing, looking at the one with iron. But what does a sensible person think who is free from bondage? What would he think? He would think all these people are bound. They are prisoners in the prison, regardless of whether somebody is bound with golden chains, somebody with silver chains, somebody with an iron chain. Ultimately, all are prisoners, all are bound. So similarly in this world, someone has a lot of money, somebody doesn't have money. Someone has some power and prestige and someone doesn't have. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we are all bound by the laws of nature. What are the laws of nature? The laws of nature are that we have to grow old. Sorry about the bad news again. One more buri khabar. We have to die. Sorry again. We have to become diseased. We have to take birth again. And in the meanwhile, there are innumerable miseries and other factors that will come to disturb our peace of mind. Every day there will be phenomena that will happen that will disturb our mind. And happiness always seems to be such an elusive thing. We struggle and struggle to keep happiness, to get happiness, but it seems to go further and further away from us. So today there is a feverish pitch of trying to get happiness by enjoyment, by pleasure, by the pleasure of this world. So we struggle to get the material pleasures of this world, not realizing that we are further implicating ourselves into more and more suffering. We are bound by the rigid laws of nature. And what we call happiness or pleasure is merely an increase of this bondage and increase of suffering. One time, there was a rich gentleman, very rich, and his wife had fever one day. He was a multi-billionaire. So his wife had fever of 100 degrees. And there was a maidservant in the house. She also happened to have fever at exactly the same time. So she had a fever of 104 degrees. So the mistress of the house became very upset. What was the cause of her dissatisfaction? The cause was, I am the mistress of the house and I have only 100. She is the maidservant and she has 104. She has more than me. So she became very angry. The husband tried to pacify her and said, look, what does it matter? She has 104 degrees fever after all. It's not that she has more money than you or something else, she just has more fever. But the wife refused to listen. I don't know finally what happened after that. But Srila Prabhupada used to give this example to illustrate how in this world we look at another person's so-called opulence, so-called success, so-called happiness and think, I wish I had that. I wish I had that kind of car. I wish I had those kind of clothes. I wish I had that kind of money. I wish I had that kind of a business or a job. I wish. There is no limit. We don't realize that this is simply a feverish pitch. We are just, what we call progress is really simply increasing fever of material enjoyment. Yesterday the devotees took me to central Melbourne, the main shopping district. I don't know the name of that area, the main road. What was that place we went to yesterday? Huh? St. Kilda. So lots of big shops and such glitter and glamour. As they say in India, chamak dhamak, you understand what this means. And people are just mesmerized by this glitter and glamour. The fancy clothing, the jewelry, all kinds of shoes and variety of electronic gadgets, mind-boggling variety of things on display. And the ordinary people who are there, they go mad because they want this, they want this, they want this, they want everything. And somehow or the other they must earn money to get all these goodies of life so they can be happy and enjoy life. But it doesn't work out like that. These things don't give us happiness. The things of this world, Lord Krishna has already promised us, will give us misery. So whatever we think is the cause of pleasure or happiness of this world will end up giving us exactly the opposite. So therefore Lord Krishna says that those who are intelligent, they avoid these unnecessary extravagances, these unnecessary objects of so-called pleasure. Because they understand ultimately they give rise to pain. So in any case, as life goes on and people become more and more materialistic, they get bound, their bondage increases more and more and more. Little do they realize that happiness is something I'm not going to get. At least not from these things. Nobody in the history of mankind has ever been happy with materialistic things. Nobody will be happy and nobody is happy today. Some years ago, I like to narrate this story very often because it's such an instructive and true story. Some years ago, one of the richest men in the world was being interviewed on television. And the interviewer was asking him many questions about his business and many things. Finally, the interview was getting over. And the interviewer asked him and said, I have one last question for you. He said, yes. And she asked him, you are the fourth richest man in the world. There's nothing in this world that you can't have that money can buy. If God were to appear in front of you at this moment, what would you ask for? What a nice question, huh? Think about it. Imagine we were that person and we were asked this question. Think for a moment. If God were to appear in front of me each of us should think like that, me, then what would I ask for? So this gentleman thought for a moment and replied, a little happiness? What's the meaning of that? What is the purport of this? When he says a little happiness, what is the implication of this? What do you say?
He doesn't have even little happiness.
Yes, he doesn't have even a little happiness. So he's not even saying I'll ask for a lot of happiness, because he knows that is something really too much to ask for. He says, I want a little happiness. So it is interesting to see how some of the most beautiful, so-called beautiful people of this world, the famous people, wealthiest people, most powerful people, how many of them have died. Many of them have died miserable deaths, lonely deaths, out of depression, out of desperation, out of loneliness, out of soured interpersonal relationships with others, out of broken relationships, out of financial problems and so many psychological problems, either by drug abuse or alcohol abuse or some other form of violent suicide. Many, many famous personalities have died like this. They have everything in life that we will all want to have, but are they happy? They are not. So where is the guarantee that we will also be happy if we have all those things? But people don't consider this. People are not very philosophical in general. And we see that the prospect of getting money and enjoyment is so powerful, it just blinds everybody's vision. It mesmerizes everybody. Everybody becomes a puppet in the hands of the glitter and glamour of this world. Everybody wants to live in a make-believe world of glitter and glamour, thinking this is real happiness. So we try to accumulate so many things, not realizing that ultimately death will come and everything will be left behind. One time, there was a king, and a saint visited his court. And the saint could see that this king is very materialistic. And even though he is reaching his last days of his life, but he still doesn't show any indications of taking to spirituality. He's just more and more absorbed in more money, more. So then he started talking to the king and he said, "Oh king, soon, because you have done such wonderful activities, you will be elevated to heaven." So the king was very happy to hear this. "Really? I will go to heaven?" He said, "Yes. But there's only one problem in heaven, my dear king." So what's that? "There's lots of mosquitoes in heaven." "Oh, then what should I do?" "Well, okay, no problem. I think we can arrange a mosquito net in heaven for you. So you can be with a mosquito net." "Oh, but there's one more problem. The mosquito net has holes." Then the saint said further, "Well, I think there's a solution to that. So when you go, you carry your stitching needle with you." And the saint left him with that and went away. Then the king started thinking one day that when I go with me, I should carry the needle, but I won't even be able to carry the needle with me when I leave this world. I go empty-handed. I came empty-handed into this world. I will leave empty-handed. I will not even be able to carry one sewing needle with me. What to speak of all the other wealth and everything that I have with me. It's all going to be left behind here to be enjoyed by somebody else. So it's something to reflect on. What is the nature of this world? What is the nature of this pleasure? It is so temporary. We are all going to have to leave everything behind here and go away. So anyone who wants real success and happiness in life must ask the question, is there some achievement in life that can be completely successful, which will never be taken away from me, which will last even beyond death? But there is no answer unless one approaches some spiritual subject for an answer. Again, this reminds me of another king. He also became proud. People like to hear about kings and queens, you know. So this king also was very absorbed in his materialistic way of life. And this saintly person came to him and started talking, and the saint realized that this person really has no interest in any spiritual topic. So what should I do to bring him to the spiritual path? And this king has become very proud also. He's very arrogant about his wealth and power. So the saint started praising the king. He said, King, you have such a perfect kingdom. You have everything in this kingdom. You have wealth, you have beauty, you have power, your subjects love you, everything is going well for you. But there's just one thing that is short in your kingdom. There's one thing you don't have. So what is that? You don't have any fool in your kingdom. Fool? Yes, you must have a fool also. You have so many intelligent people in your kingdom, but there must also be at least one fool to make everything complete. The king was saying, that's a strange kind of comment. Anyway, so what should I do? So the saint said, just advertise. Advertise that all the PR holders should come and apply for this job of the personal, fool in the court of the king. So then many people applied, and the king wanted to be sure that whoever applies or is selected is actually a fool. So finally, after a rigorous interviewing process, there were shortlists, and finally one person was selected. And he was crowned as the biggest fool in the kingdom. And he was given employment. So then the fool came to the king, and he asked him, so what is my job description? He said, okay, what to do now? He didn't know what job to give this man. He wanted to keep him engaged somehow. So he said, okay, you take this stick and you roam around the kingdom. This will be your symbol that you are the biggest fool. So when you hold this stick, people will know that you are the biggest fool in the kingdom. So this man would go around everywhere, and people would laugh at him, and in this way they would mock him. So the months passed by, the years passed by, the fool was getting a good salary, everything was going well. One day the king was diagnosed with a very serious illness. And all the doctors in the kingdom said, sorry, there is no solution. There is no further medicine or medical treatment that we can give you. It seems, my dear king, that your lifespan is coming to an end. The king was very, very shocked and sorry to hear this. He was very afraid to face death. All of a sudden, he saw the fool in the court. And the fool came and started talking to the king. So, my dear king, you seem to be very sad. What has happened? He said, oh fool, what will you understand? What can I tell you? Well, anyway, I'll tell you in a way that you can understand. He said, I have to go on a very long journey. Really? Can I come with you? He said, no. This journey is something I have to do on my own. I have to go alone on this journey. Really? Then can I ask the queen to pack some food for you? Some prasadam for the way? So if it's a long journey, you may need some food. Oh no, my dear fool. This is such a journey, I can't carry any food with me either. Really? Okay, but it's a very long journey, you're saying. So can I arrange some transport for you at least? I can tell the minister to arrange some car. Oh, you are really a fool, you don't understand. No transport system will work. Really, no transport will work. So where are you going, my king? Where is this place? He said, I don't know. You don't know where you're going? So he went on asking him so many questions, and each time the king would say, give an answer like this, oh, you won't know. I can't take this along. I can't take that along. Shall I give you some warm clothing? Oh, I can't carry it with me. Why are you going there? I don't know why I'm going there. So finally, the fool took that stick and forcibly placed it in the hand of the king. Say, here you are. The king was enraged. He said, what do you mean? Because the king understood the significance of him passing the stick to him. He said, my dear king, I thought I was the greatest fool in the kingdom, but I now realize that you are the biggest fool in the kingdom. So the king asked him, why? He said, look, you're going on a journey. You don't know where you're going. You don't know why you're going. You don't know how you will go. You're not going to be able to carry anything that you've accumulated in this life along with you on this journey. Not even food, no cloth, no money, no credit cards, nothing you'll carry with you. You don't even know where you are going. So who can be a greater fool than a person who works hard for something he doesn't know where he's going? The king understood the message. And now he reflected upon that saint's visit. Oh yes, because the saint had understood that I was not in a position to understand this. So he has taken resort to this method. But now it's too late. I'm very close to my deathbed. So at that time he told the fool, who was not actually a fool. He was the most intelligent person because he was spiritually very advanced. And that saintly person had arranged for this fool to be here so that the king could be taught a lesson. He had to wait for the right time. Because you see, sometimes, even though people may give us good advice, unless the time is right, our minds don't accept that advice. I think we all have experience of these things. Either some other people have told us something which is good for us and we realize much later. Or we tell others some good advice and they don't listen to us. I remember in India going to the house of one devotee, and he had called me because he had some tension with his son. The father and son were having some relationship problem. They used to have arguments and matters had come to a little serious level. But he was a teenager. So, teenagers sometimes have their own mind. They want to do what they want to do. So the father was having some trouble with the son. So now when I went to the house, of course, at that time I did not know why he wanted me to be in the house. But in the living room there was a nice printed poster. And I thought that poster was really witty. It was very nice. And the poster said, by the time you realize your parents were right, you have children who think you are wrong. Did you understand this? By the time you realize your parents were right, you have children who think you are wrong. Then when you have to tell your children the same thing your parents told you, you start realizing, oh, now these people are not listening to me. I wish I had listened to my parents. Now the tables are turned on me. So we all have experienced that when people tell us and give us some good advice, sometimes we're not in a frame of mind to receive it. I met a young man recently who took a very, shall we say, wrong decision in his life when it came to his personal life. And anybody could have seen it was a wrong decision, that it would have very bad effects later on. And indeed, what everybody told him would happen, happened. And then he was in a very distraught state of mind. And I asked him, didn't anybody advise you at that time not to do this? He said, yes, everybody advised me. And why did you do it? He said, the time was that I was young, I was only 23 years old at that time, and I just didn't want to listen to anybody, and now I repent. So this is the story. There are times when we will not listen to good advice. When our minds are too preoccupied with thoughts of this material world, any spiritual instruction doesn't penetrate into our minds. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna tells us a beautiful verse. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya paharita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhihi samadhau na vidhiyate. The meaning of this verse is, Lord Krishna says, for one whose mind is too focused and absorbed on trying to obtain worldly pleasure and enjoyment and trying to accumulate more and more money, the resolute determination to try to understand spiritual matters does not arise. In other words, when one is too absorbed in just the materialistic pursuits of life, spiritual instructions also don't penetrate. The same thing happened even with Duryodhana. You all know the story of the Mahabharata. So when the matters came to a head, and it seemed that war was inevitable, everybody, including Duryodhana's father Dhritarashtra and his mother Gandhari, they were all trying to scold Duryodhana. So much so that his mother even told him, "Oh son, have you taken a vow to destroy our dynasty? It seems you have taken such a vow, because you will not listen to anyone's good advice." His father told him, "Listen, my dear son, Lord Krishna is on the side of the Pandavas. He is the creator of this universe. And with him on the Pandavas' side, you have no hope of victory. I have heard from the great saint Vyas, I have heard from my secretary Sanjay, that Krishna is actually God. He is the Supreme Lord. So please, now there is still time. It is still not too late. You can give to the Pandavas their rightful share." And Duryodhana made that famous statement, "I will not give them even enough land to be on the head of a pin," because the Pandavas were asking for 5 villages. He said, "I will not even give them enough land that can fit in on the head of a pin. And as far as Krishna is concerned, even if he can burn down the entire universe with his glance, I will still not surrender to him." So this kind of stubbornness or impenetrability for spiritual instructions is seen in those who are very absorbed in materialistic life. Even if the most logical spiritual truths are told to them, it just cannot click. It doesn't get into the mind. Srila Prabhupada one time narrated a humorous anecdote about 2 friends who were quarreling. And the subject of the quarrel related to a scissor and a knife. So one of them was saying, no, the answer is knife. The other said, no, scissor. Knife, scissor, knife, scissor. They went on arguing. The temperature of the argument started rising. They started coming to blows with each other simply because of knife or scissor. Finally, the man who was saying knife is correct, he lifted up the other man and threw him into the river. Now, the man who was drowning in the river, actually he didn't know how to swim. So he was drowning. And even as he was drowning, the man on the shore was saying, knife, knife. And this man, as long as his head was above the water, was saying, scissor, scissor. But soon his head submerged under the water, but still his hand was going like this. To say, scissor, scissor is right. And he drowned and died. So Srila Prabhupada was saying that is the condition of people in this world who will not listen to spiritual instruction. Because their mind is so absorbed in the glitter and glamour of materialistic life. So this king also understood that the saint was very clever. He knew that I would not be able to hear this message at that time, so he has waited. So he told that so-called fool, please call your guru now. So the saint came and he said, okay, now you're ready. Now you're ready to hear my instructions. So then he gave him good spiritual instructions, and the life of the king, even in his last few months or days, life was transformed. And he attained a lot of spiritual progress by the mercy of that great saint. So similarly, we should not also wait till it is too late. And one day it will become late. I met one of my school friends who was with me when we were really small. I met him after many, many years, and he came to know that I was in this path, and he was really surprised. So he was talking to me, and he said, you know, I was not at all spiritually minded. My grandfather was very religious. My grandfather, when he was on his deathbed, he was a very old man. And now I had just joined business, my father's business. And my grandfather called me to him. And he told me, look, he said, I used to be a very spiritually minded person. I used to read spiritual books. I used to attend spiritual discourses. I used to perform many spiritual practices, but somehow I left my village and I came to this big city, Bombay, and I got completely absorbed in the business, and then it was just money, money and more money. I gave up everything else. I was just going after money. You know, in this world they say money is honey. You heard that? Because the taste of money is very sweet. So people go after money because they think it's very sweet. So anyway, so he said, my grandfather told me that I spent a whole life. I was 16 years old when I came here. Today I am 76 years old. And I realized that I have wasted 60 years of my life. Now that I am on my deathbed, I remember my childhood, how spiritually minded I was, and how I gave up that beautiful, happy life, even though it was very simple. And I just went madly after money and money. And now that I'm on my deathbed and I realize everything will be taken away from me, I realize I have wasted my life. So please, he told him, that means the grandfather told the grandson, you please don't make a mistake. You are a young man. When I came here, there was no wealth, no money. But now we have built the business. You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You are born a millionaire. But don't waste your life like I did. Do your business. Look after your business. But ensure that you take your spiritual life very seriously. That happened to be the turning point for this young man. And then when he met me, he was remembering this. He said, yes, this was a good instruction that my grandfather gave. So we are all going to be in a similar situation, because one day, sooner or later, we will be separated from things that we like, from things that we have worked so hard to acquire. So every intelligent person must start thinking, what is it that will really give me happiness in life? What is it that I must acquire which I can never lose? Money will be lost, prestige will be lost, this body will be lost, the family will be lost, the house will be lost. What is it that will never be taken away from me? This is something really significant and important to ask. And that is our spirituality. Neha bhikramanashosti pratyavayo na vidyate Svalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a little spiritual advancement, Lord Krishna promises in the Gita, will protect us from the greatest type of fear. The fear is that we may, in the next life, descend into some lower species of life, lose our human form of life in which we can actually develop spiritual perfection, for which the human life is meant. The primary teaching of the Bhagavad Gita is that we are the Atma, the eternal spirit soul. We are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. We have a relationship of love with that one Supreme Lord. That love we have forgotten. We are looking for that love here in this world, but we never find it. That happiness that we're looking for is actually found there in relationship to God, but we are trying to find it here. When we revive the relationship of the soul with God, that is called spirituality. Spirituality is a process of recognizing that I am a spiritual being. I am just not this body. This body is a vehicle. It is a covering for the soul. But the real me is not this body. It is the soul. So to recognize that I am a spiritual being in essence, and that God exists, and God has a spiritual personality and a form. He lives in His abode, and I have a relationship of love with Him. That is the second dimension of spirituality. To act according to that relationship that the eternal soul has with the eternal Lord, that is called Bhakti, or divine love. When we actually embark upon this process of cultivating divine love, or Bhakti, and eventually reach its perfection, that is a third dimension of spirituality. That is what real spirituality is all about. It's a very simple process. And it is explained that in this age, which is called Kali Yuga, the process of spirituality boils down to chanting the names of God. There is one scripture called the Kali Santaran Upanishad, in which a great mantra for deliverance has been given. There are many mantras, but this is Maha Mantra. And that Maha Mantra is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Simply by chanting these holy names of Lord Krishna, we can actually revive our spiritual nature once again. We have forgotten that spiritual nature. Now human life is a wonderful opportunity to revive that remembrance. By chanting the names of the Lord, automatically everything wonderful materializes. When somebody has an accident or something, you may have seen this in the movies or something. Somebody has an accident, and then they come back to consciousness and they ask, who am I? Yes, happens. It's called amnesia. So we are also under the spell of spiritual amnesia. We don't know who we are. If you ask anybody, who are you? Then they'll most likely give you some information about the body. My name is so-and-so, and I live in such and such a place, and I am from such and such a country. I do such and such for a job, and this is my family. They were most likely to give you information like this. But that is not who they are. That is only information about the body. It's not information about the soul. You might also have seen that sometimes people get into an argument with each other, and finally again when the argument becomes heated, one of them might tell the other person, "Who do you think you are?" Yeah? Happens like that sometimes. Actually, even the person asking the question doesn't realize how deep and philosophical the question is that he's asking. It's such a deep question. Indeed, who do you think you are? And the answer is, I am the eternal spirit soul. I am a tiny fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. I have forgotten Krishna at this time. I need to revive my relationship of love with Krishna. And then I can come out of this cycle of birth and death, which has only caused me misery. And then I can return to Lord Krishna's eternal kingdom in the spiritual world and live there eternally with Him in a spiritual body where there will be no misery, no problems at all, no death, no birth, no old age, no disease, no taxes, no demerits in driving. It's a life of full happiness, eternal life of joy. That is our destination. That is the culmination of our spirituality. And all this is possible when we associate with spiritually minded people and we chant the holy names of the Lord. So simple. The process is not complicated. We don't have to take sannyas. We don't have to go to the jungle. We don't have to become Sanskrit Pandits or something. Anyone in any situation of life, as ordinary householders living in Melbourne, doing your job and business and looking after your family, you can make your life perfect spiritually. You can and should become spiritually minded and attain perfection, because this is what human life is meant for. I want to thank you once again for your very patient and kind attention to everything I had to say. I apologize once again for my delay in coming. I have kept you waiting for quite a while. I would also like to offer my thanks to Shashi and his good wife Ratna, and also Chinmay Radha for having made arrangements for us this evening, so that we could gather together to have some little discussions on spirituality. And I think at this point in time, if I would like to throw open the floor to any questions that you may have that may be connected to spirituality or how to apply spirituality in your life. Please raise your hands and you may ask the questions from wherever you are seated. Please do not hesitate to ask. Yes.
Hare Krishna. You talk about the fly in the web, but then only the person who is free can save that fly, right? So the question is, do I have to wait for the person who can free me, being trapped in a fly web, being trapped fly in a web, or do I have to do something to bring that person?
Okay. So your question, for those of you who could not hear, in the course of the lecture, I gave the analogy of a fly who is caught in the web of the spider, and the spider or the fly can be released from the web only if someone from outside frees the fly. The fly, merely by his own efforts, cannot become free. So the question is that should we, who abound in this nature, material nature, just wait for someone to come and free us? Or should we also proactively do something? Well, certainly nothing happens of its own accord. Nahi suptasya simhasya pravishanti mukhe mrigaha. It is explained in a Sanskrit proverb that even though the lion is the king of the forest, Even he has to work hard for his food. He cannot think, I'm the king of the forest, so I will just sit and keep my mouth open and the food will come into my mouth. He also has to work. The ordinary animals in the forest have to work hard for their food, and so does the lion of the forest, the king of the forest, the lion. Similarly, to achieve anything in life, effort is required. We cannot simply sit back and think that things will happen of their own accord. So there must be effort to try to understand how this process of spirituality works. So one has to seek the mercy and the blessings of God, of Lord Krishna, so that one may be somehow or other connected to a community of spiritualists, of devotees of the Lord. We can connect ourselves to Srila Prabhupada, the great Acharya for modern times, who has given us wonderful instructions and given us a whole balanced program for how we should live our life. Under his shelter, under the protection of his organization, this ISKCON movement, we will find many people who will help us on our path, so that we can become freed from this bondage of material existence. So yes, we must also proactively do something, and the rest we depend on for the mercy of the Lord. Okay? Is there any other question?
Here.
Yes.
Maharaj, that proactive activity, can that be just a desire?
The proactive activity, can it just be a desire? Let me give an analogy. Let's say I want to do a business. Can the proactivity be just a desire? If I want to excel in studies and get a gold medal at the university, can I just simply desire? If I want to be a gold medalist in the Olympics in some particular sport, is it enough for me to only desire? No. So I must make the effort. I must make the effort to pray to God, to show me the path, to pray intensely. And when we get connected somehow to the association of devotees, then we must follow very sincerely and enthusiastically the rules and regulations and the procedures that may be taught to us from the scriptures. So that determined following of the process on our part is very important. So that is the effort on our part that must be there. Fundamentally, of course, the desire. But that desire must be not left at only just a desire. We must actually put that into practice, into action. Yes? Okay, one question here. Okay, you have mentioned that if you seek happiness in the material world, you would go far from happiness. Does that mean that we should not have kids as we look for happiness in getting one? No, it doesn't mean that. There is scope in this life for various stages, and the household life, which is called the Grihastha life, is one of them. So in Grihastha life, certainly there will be children. But how does one see one's children? One should see one's children as a gift of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna has sent this child or these children into my life for me to look after him or her or them in such a way that I can help them to become spiritually perfect, and so that they can also become pure devotees of Lord Krishna and go back to the spiritual world. In that spirit, as a trustee, we should act. You know the difference between an owner and a trustee, right? The trustee, in all practical sense, is like the owner because he has all control over the property. But the trustee understands that I am not the actual owner. It is my duty to look after this property in the interests of the real owner, as the owner desires. So similarly, we are trustees of our children. Lord Krishna has given these children to us to look after. It is a gift of God given to us, not only for feeding and clothing and educating in the material world, but most importantly, for spiritually educating them to become pure devotees of the Lord. That is our highest responsibility. So certainly, it gives happiness to have children, yes, but at the same time, one must spiritually connect them. Then that will become meaningful. Yes, any other questions? Yeah. When the time is right, we will get spirituality. Please define this statement. It depends on our frame of mind. If you ask me, the right time is now. The sooner the better. But somehow, if we are not in a position to heed spiritual instructions, for whatever reasons, then at least as soonest possible. We need not wait till it becomes too late. As I illustrated with a few examples. The best time to take to spirituality is actually when one is very young, but better late than never. Next question. You mentioned that the soul is eternal and also a fragment of the Supreme Lord. How do we establish simultaneously that the soul is eternal and the Lord is a source? Yes, this may be something inconceivable. The Lord is, or the Jiva, the soul is eternally a fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord. We cannot visualize these things with our ordinary mundane intelligence. But we should know, according to the statements of the Gita, that the soul has always been a part and parcel of Lord Krishna, eternally. Mama Ivansho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha. Sanatan means eternal. So on the spiritual platform, time has no limitations like it does here. Is there any other question? Yes.
Prabhu, you gave an analogy of the Charaks theory and the king, who says that in that analogy, basically is a message that whatever we do, there's nothing we can take along with us after the death. So doesn't it prove the Charaks theory that die in death and do whatever you can do to enjoy your life? So why spirituality is important?
Okay, so your question is that through some stories I try to illustrate that you can't carry anything with you to the next life. So doesn't it...
Sorry, whether it's good or evil, whatever you do.
Oh, that you can, that you do take forward, yes. What you don't take forward are your physical assets, like your body, your house, your money, your prestige, etc. But what you do take forward are your karmic reactions. That means you have done some good or bad activities, and those reactions will be carried forward to the next life where you will receive them. And ultimately you carry forward your spirituality, whatever you have cultivated in the previous lives. That will be carried forward till such time as you reach perfection. But yes, the sins will be carried forward, the piety will also be carried forward. That is how somebody is born mentally challenged. Somebody is born with a genius's IQ. Somebody is born in a rich multi-billionaire family. Somebody is born in a very poor family. Somebody is born a musical genius. Somebody is born with some other kind of talent and not music. There is an infinite degree of variety that we find that people have right from birth. Why do these varieties come? Because of the carry forward from the previous life. Because of the sins and piety that are brought forward to this life. So yes, these things, the karmic reactions would do carry forward, but not when we say that you can't carry anything forward, what I meant was the physical things like your money and so on. For example, if someone dies a millionaire in this life, there is no guarantee that he will be born again in the next life in a millionaire's family. May not happen like that. Alright? Yes.
What is the difference between soul and consciousness?
Okay, good question. What is the difference between soul and consciousness? Consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Inasmuch as the sunlight is a symptom of the sun.
Manifestation.
It's a symptom. What is the symptom of the bulb? The light. Yes? How do you understand that there is a light in the room? When there is light that comes from it. Or when you have a disease, and that disease brings certain effects, like stomachache or headache, and these are symptoms. The symptoms are caused by some underlying cause. So similarly, consciousness exists because there's the soul. Consciousness is a property of the soul. The soul is always conscious, but the body is not conscious. Okay? Yes. See, I was talking about how this material world is a place of misery. You can see now. And don't think it's going to end with childhood. All through, so many miseries are inflicted upon us even though we don't want them. Nobody wants to grow old, forced to grow old. No one wants disease, it comes. No one wants death, it comes. Similarly, no one will want to be born again, but it happens. So we must ask the question, why are these miseries being forced upon us? Okay, so next question. We are so caught up in looking after our family, making money, it's very difficult to find time to practice devotional service. How do we find time? And what should we do to begin with using minimum amount of time? Well, at least you have been honest. How do you find time for anything? Tell me. How do you find time for anything at all? How do you decide?
Time management, prioritize.
Somebody said something. Prioritization. What is the meaning of prioritization? Important things come first. Let's say there's a businessman, and all of a sudden he gets a call about some potential business contract that could yield him a couple of $1 million. Yes? And he's doing something important, like sitting in a boring Bhagavad Gita lecture by someone who has just come in from the Melbourne temple. And then he says, I meant this lecture. So immediately he will leave and attend to it. Everything else, even though there may be other issues, there may be other things that are important, but this thing, because he realizes it is so important for him, he attaches so much importance to this that he will find time for it. Will he not? He will put aside everything else, even if it means there will be a lot of inconvenience in doing that. Because he thinks that bagging that multi-million-dollar contract is so important. In other words, to answer your question, how do we find time for our spiritual life? By number one, understanding how important it is in our life, and then giving it the time that it deserves according to its importance. So prioritization. If we're going to not give importance to the really important things in life, then our life will not be effectively utilized, it will be wasted. So attending such spiritual discourses, reading spiritual literature, etc., is very important to be done on a regular basis, because it will give us the conviction that this is what life is meant for. This is very, very important for us, and we must find time for this. Where there is a will, there is a way. So we will find time if we have the will to find time. Yes?
Share one line on this issue.
Yes.
If you permit.
Yes, please.
What I'm saying, I don't have time to refuel my car because I'm busy driving.
You don't have time?
To refuel, to fill gas in my car because I'm busy driving.
Okay, so your answer to the question is you're so busy driving that you don't have time to refuel the car. And then what happens? Then you stop. Okay. All right. Next question. Is it proved in the Vedas or scriptures that only chanting 16 rounds of Mahamantra and following 4 regulative principles will take us back to Godhead? Or is it just a mythology by Srila Prabhupada? No, it is not a mythology, certainly. Pure devotees have no business speaking mythologies. They only speak things that are based on scriptures. Pure devotees, like Srila Prabhupada, do not teach us things that they concoct. They only teach things that are taught in the scriptures through the Guru Shishya Parampara, the disciplic succession. So truth, especially regarding spiritual matters, cannot be a matter of what I think or you think. It is a matter of what God thinks, which is given in the scriptures, and then that is relayed to us by great acharyas like Srila Prabhupada. So certainly these things are mentioned, but 16 rounds in particular is not mentioned. That is the indication given by Srila Prabhupada to us, according to our situation. But please remember, 16 rounds of the Mahamantra is not the maximum we have to chant. It is the minimum we have to chant if we want to be more Krishna conscious. All right. Okay. Next question. Let us say someone has met with an accident or disease, then should we just talk about some sympathetic words or give these words with Krishna Katha or just Krishna Katha? What if the person doesn't take the Krishna science? Then should we just continue giving good advice or leave them alone? Okay. Well, first and foremost, we understand that every human being is a combination of body, mind and soul. And we know that all three have importance. When we talk of spirituality and cultivating the soul, we are not saying that you should ignore the body and the mind. That must also be looked after. Just as our body and mind needs to be looked after along with the soul, so it goes with other people. So when there is, let's say, another person who has had an accident, as you say, or some major disease, then we should function on all three platforms: body, mind and soul. If somebody has an accident sitting next to us, we are not going to say, well, you are the eternal soul, and leave him lying there. We are going to pick him up and take him to the hospital and do the needful for the body. Or if someone practicing spirituality or has some trauma because of someone passing away, his loved one passing away or something, some such agony, we're not going to say, well, you're the soul, you're not the body, just forget about this. No, we will offer words of solace. We will offer words of support. We will be kind. We will be gentle. We will be understanding. And we will offer all possible solace at the bodily and mental platforms. But we will not neglect offering true knowledge and inspiration on the platform of the soul. So we will make that a very important part. Actually, that's the most important part of our help to that person. But not at the neglect of also what the body and mind need. Okay, next question. I have started chanting last year. I have just faced miseries in my life, stress and depression. At what point of time in bhakti does Lord Krishna start showing mercy and make me materially happy? Or is it fixed by my past karma that I will have to face only miseries? Well, if it gives you any solace, we are all in the same boat. You are not alone, whoever asked this question. It is everybody's story. We are all in the same boat. It is said there are only two kinds of people in this world who are happy. Or rather just happy, let's say. One is the pure devotee of the Lord, the spiritually self-realized person, and the other is the insane person. That's what the Srimad Bhagavatam says. So only two kinds of people are happy. For everybody in between, well, the struggle goes on. But if you keep the struggle keeping Lord Krishna in the center, and that is the goal of your life, then that struggle will be worthwhile. It will eventually help to make a permanent solution to the suffering. So to answer your question, at what point of time will start Krishna showing you mercy to make you materially happy, I may point out that material happiness may not necessarily be an indication of Krishna's mercy. The presence or absence of material happiness may or may not have anything to do with Krishna's mercy. Sometimes Krishna gives his mercy by taking away our material happiness, and sometimes he may give it by giving us material happiness. He may, depending on what we can handle and what's good for us. If he thinks that I can handle money well as a devotee, then he may give me money, because he knows I will use it for Lord Krishna's service. Or sometimes he may take it away for reasons best known to him. So now that you have started actually chanting, I would suggest that you understand that all the past karmas of your lives, previous lives, are getting washed away now, and your future is very bright. Because by the power of chanting, now you have come to the point where your existence is very pure. If you take Krishna consciousness very seriously, then you will see Lord Krishna's mercy flowing into your life. In terms of your increased faith, your devotion, your conviction, and your stability and serenity of mind despite being in materially difficult situations. So better not to ask Lord Krishna for material happiness, because Lord Krishna can give you much more. He can give you spiritual happiness. So why not ask him for that? Your happiness and distress anyway will come according to your karma, materially speaking. Next question. You mentioned about karmic reactions, that we take these to our next lives. So does it mean that if we go on the spiritual path, then we are accumulating good karmas for our next life? And what are the first few steps a person can take if we decide to go on the spiritual path? You see, there are three kinds of karmas we can do. One is called pious activity. The second is called sinful activity. The third is called spiritual activity. Pious and sinful activity both are material. Therefore, you carry them forward surely, but once you enjoy or suffer the reactions of those karmas, then those karmas are neutralized. They no longer exist. Let's say we commit a sin now, and we get the sinful reaction of that, and that compensates for the sin committed. Similarly, the piety. We commit a pious act, we get some material happiness as a result of that. Then that pious activity is now eliminated. So, sinful activities are exhausted, sinful reactions are exhausted by suffering, pious reactions are exhausted by enjoyment in this world. But the spiritual activities are different. The spiritual activities remain. They are carried forward bit by bit by bit by bit over many, many lifetimes. That is never compensated or eliminated by anything or anyone. We keep carrying it forward. Imagine a bank balance that can only increase and never decrease. That's your spiritual bank balance. It can never reduce. So that is our spiritual karma. So we carry our spiritual karma, in other words, our devotional credits with us. And when that accumulates up to a certain point, when we become a pure devotee of the Lord, in the process, the material, pious and sinful activities are all destroyed. And what remains is only the accumulation of our spiritual credits. That enables us then to go back to the spiritual world and come out of the cycle of birth and death. Your next part of the question was, what are the first few steps a person can take if he decide to go on the spiritual path? The first and most important thing to do is to come to the association of devotees. This is called satsanga. Company is very important. When we associate with divinely minded people, with devotees, we will also become like that. A man is known by the company he keeps, there's a saying. So this is the first and most important thing. The second thing to do is to hear and gain knowledge of spirituality, of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, to understand the philosophy very nicely. The third is to chant the holy names of the Lord. So the first one was association, to take the association of devotees, which is A. The next one is to gain knowledge through the books and through discourses, B for books. Next is chanting, C for chanting, chant the holy names on the beads and even musically. And then D for diet. Take Krishna Prasadam. Don't take anything else that is not good for your spiritual life. Eat a proper diet. And E is etiquette. Follow the various rules and regulations, the do's and don'ts that a devotee is supposed to do gradually. Then you will attain good progress in your spiritual life. Finally, next question. If we are doing our duties honestly, like doing our work, looking after our children, husband and family, etc., can we consider that we are practicing spirituality? The answer is, in and of themselves, these activities are not spiritual. They are materially pious activities. Spirituality is something different. When one actually becomes a devotee of the Lord, one still has to do these things. But now these things become spiritualized because we're doing it for Lord Krishna. Because now we understand this is Lord Krishna's family. My husband is not my property, he is Lord Krishna's property. My child is not my property, he is also Krishna's property. So I must look after them, serve them in that spirit. And together we must all serve Lord Krishna and advance on this path of Krishna consciousness. That is our approach to it. So these things, necessary as they are in this world, are not in and of themselves spiritual activities. But when we practice spirituality, we must also do these things responsibly, properly, and in a Krishna conscious spirit. So fine, we will stop here. I think we are quite late now. So, okay, so much. I don't mind, but if some of you are hungry, then should we go on for a few minutes? What does our host say? Okay. Fine. Please explain, as a fallen soul, how could I pray and whom shall I pray to? What should I pray? We should pray to Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. And we should pray, please make me your pure devotee. Please give me all the facility I need to become your pure devotee. Give me the association of your sincere devotees. Give me the faith in you so that I can chant your holy names very sincerely. Please give me a deep understanding of the process by which I can love you and become your pure devotee. This is what we can pray. Next question. You said it is important to maintain family life, but also emphasis on spirituality is most important. How can we engage teenagers in spirituality, especially when they are at an age that they don't want to listen and have made up their own mind? So teenage is usually a difficult age. Therefore, if you want the teenagers to take to spirituality, you have to begin really young. You have to begin when the children are actually in the womb. That's when you have to start. Because by the time they are teenagers, otherwise they are sufficiently spoilt in the material world. So by giving them what we call samskars in Sanskrit, the good impressions in their consciousness, then even when they are in their teenage years, they will continue to be on the spiritual path. Because the teenage years are such, there may be some distractions and deviations and troubles, but if the samskars have been good, eventually when they mature a little bit, they will come back to the spiritual path. So that is the important point. Next question. Impediments in bhakti such as health and financial loss, etc., are they due to a lack of Krishna consciousness or is it a test? Could be both. We can take it as a test and we should have faith and continue with our Krishna consciousness without stopping so that we will pass the test, and that will give us increased faith and advancement. Okay, next question. If our child behaves in a way that is not socially acceptable, is it their karma? Or rather, is their karma also part of the parents' karma? Yes, yes. It is only by the laws of karma that we get certain parents, and it is also by the laws of karma that we get a certain child. However, everything ultimately can be adjusted if we become Krishna conscious. There's nothing that ultimately cannot be resolved on the spiritual platform. Next question. When we chant, our mind is elsewhere. Should we stop and concentrate our mind and continue to chant? Yes, even if our mind wanders, we should continue to chant. But our effort should be to bring back the mind to the sound of the holy name of Lord Krishna. We should not stop chanting because our mind wanders. That is definitely going to happen. Hare Krishna. So, okay, one last question. Why did Lord Krishna lie a few times? If he is the Lord, then why to lie? To teach us that we must always speak the truth. Because Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. And actually on the absolute platform, everything that Krishna does is the truth. He does it for his own ultimate purpose. He has nothing to do with the dualities and opposites of this world. He is God. He is not an ordinary person like us, where things like lies and truth apply. He is personified truth. He is absolute truth himself. Of course, it's a big topic. The deeper you get into it in understanding Lord Krishna, then this will become clear. So finally, thank you. And now we will have some kirtan for 5 minutes. Yes? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की श्रील प्रभुपाद की और प्रेमानंद। Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.